Awesome. Today, I'm really excited to talk to you today. We're here with Krista Bigler with Authentic Healing with Krista. And it looks like before we even started, we were chatting a lot about some exciting things. And so I'll let you introduce yourself first, and then we can dive into all of that. But we're going to be touching on a lot of, I'm sure, some mental health, just holistic wellness,
Yes.
sound, and a bunch of other things. So I'm really excited to dive in. But if you would like to introduce yourself first.
Absolutely. So I'm Krista Bigler. I am a mental health professional. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. And I was working in the field for over 18 years. And I also simultaneously was doing my own mental health counseling, from trauma. And over the years, those emotions and things that get trapped in the body turned into physical issues like autoimmune. In fact, I had a very serious hospitalization when I was pregnant. And at 24 weeks pregnant, they put me on a ventilator because I went into respiratory failure. At the time, they didn't know what was causing it. And so kind of intermittently, sometimes really serious things would happen, despite that I was doing everything I was told to, rather, mental health wise or physically as well. So clearly there are some holes in the system where what I figured out was, we are missing the mind, body, spirit piece, which is why I call myself a mind, body, spirit mentor. So if you go to a physical doctor, they're focusing on the physical. If you go to a clergy member, they're looking at the spiritual. And if you go to a mental health therapist, they're looking at the mental emotional. But if you leave out any one of those pieces, you're going to be out of balance. So the basis is we need to bring our bodies back to homeostasis so that our bodies can be in balance, because our whole body is energy down to our very cells. Every cell has energy. Everything in the body is frequency. And so I after, not having great success with doing things the traditional way, I had to find another method. So I was not holistic at all before. I didn't know anything about it.
So your personal experiences kind of introduced you to...
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
So, and what happened was, after I'd been in the hospital and I got the flu. So I almost died of just the flu. And so a couple of years later, that's when COVID hit. And I was horrified. I mean, I was relatively young, but then, my doctors were like, we don't know why this happened. And they were trying to tell me it was a fluke, and I was going, oh, okay. I've had all these symptoms you can't explain. And so basically the anxiety I already had was up to like a 10. So what I had already been working on, when COVID hit, that really scared me. The things that I was hearing, because I almost died of just the flu.
Right.
And so they ended up finding out I have these blood clotting antibodies. So I'd get really sick and it would make my blood clot. And it was a miracle that they even found it. I kind of had to provoke them, tell them, I know there's something wrong with my blood, keep testing. They wouldn't have tested if I hadn't asked them to. And so they found what was wrong. And, they gave me a couple of things to do, but it was kind of like, cross your fingers, you don't have a stroke, a heart attack, or a clot. So me, who had been working with hospice patients for 18 years and had seen people have heart attacks, clots, strokes, and seen the effects of those things, that's when my brain said, no way. Mm-hmm. I am not going through that. I'm too young for this. There has to be a better way. And so my own intuition just basically told me there's something else you're supposed to do. And I didn't know what that was. And there was this conference that I was led to go to. And basically it was like, go find the thing. And so I went to this conference all day. And at the very end of the day, I met this woman who showed me this device. At the time, we had a device, and now
Was it a health conference of sorts? Or
yes,
like,
it was.
okay.
It was kind of like a
Like a
health energy conference.
Okay, cool.
And so it wasn't really something I had been to before, but it was really interesting. I watched all the classes. I started kind of understanding where these people were coming from, a side that I hadn't had a lot of exposure to, and so she showed me this device that could show you what was going on in the body energetically. That was very similar to blood chemistry. The difference is when you get your blood drawn, you're looking at chemistry, and this is looking at the energy. So we don't call it diagnostic, but it gives you all this educational info about your body.
Okay.
So that's why I originally was very interested. I thought, okay, I can see what's going on with my blood. That's perfect, because I knew that would make my anxiety go down, because otherwise you have no idea what's going on.
So did you you found that health conference because you were motivated to get out of the situation that you were in, and you knew there was a missing piece, and so
Yes.
did you, or were you pointed in that direction from?
No, it was
Okay,
just...
so you were looking for that. That was kind of what was motivating you to get out of the anxiety that you were feeling with.
Yeah, it was.
the news
It
you
was
had.
just my own intuition, because that's what I was left with,
Okay.
And the doctors did their best. That they gave me what they knew, and in fact, I had one of the best blood doctors in the state, but I just wasn't satisfied with that answer.
Right.
That it was just like, let's just hope, something terrible doesn't happen. So my mind was thinking, no, there has to be something more preventative. There has to be something that can help me get better. And I didn't have any idea what it was, but I feel like I was led to find this. Yeah, to find something. And so that's what drew me into it, was she was showing me, what I could see going on in the body. And I didn't know at the time that there was also this sound healing component to it that would help with emotions. So I purchased it. I started using it. I was very sick at the time. And at first I was just doing the full body scans that was like showing you the info. Because there's kind of a lot to it at first. And so...
What is this called, by the way?
It's called the AO scan.
The AO scan?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
So we're actually based in Orem, Utah.
Awesome.
Our CEO. And his story is he adopted a child with cerebral palsy and wanted to be able to help him as well. And he was in a wheelchair at the time. And after multiple trips out of the country, bringing this technology from Russia, Germany, he has revamped it. He has taken it. He keeps improving on it. And, you'd never know looking at his adult child that he had cerebral palsy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
He's done quite a few amazing things. And so what they started with was this actual inner voice piece. That was what the whole thing was going to be. And what it is it'll analyze about 10 seconds of your voice, which measures the vibrations, the frequencies in your voice, and it gives you a report that'll show underlying emotions with some lie detector technology. And then the coolest part is that it'll generate custom audios that have the binaural beats. And basically what it's doing is it's taking your overused emotions and bringing them down, and then your suppressed emotions and bringing them up, so you're at a more balanced level.
Okay.
So resonance, basically, it's like when you're using a tuning fork and you hit it, you're using the 180 frequency. You're using the opposite fork. And so that's the way this works, is with resonance. So so with the inner voice, they're notes. So it'll send you the opposite note to bring that back to balance.
So essentially, if it's like, let's say, a sound bath or the tuning forks or something like that, there's a certain frequency in that you're just interacting with. But with this, it's customized to your voice.
Yes,
and so
exactly.
it's doing the same thing, but there's actually like data or something that you can gauge and understand with that,
Yes.
versus just going into like a sound healing and you experience that with the certain notes and frequencies. They're doing something,
Right.
but this one's customized to you because it's picking it up through your voice.
Correct.
Interesting.
Yes.
That's fascinating.
Yes. And so therefore it works on it uses multiple frequencies. So, you'll get a lot with a sound bath. They're wonderful. But you may not get like that suppressed emotion. The last report, so there's 4 reports that it generates and then 4 audios. Although now you can use one for all of them, so they keep improving it. But
like a layered binaural beat or something?
Well, so before it was we'd have the 4 audios. When I started, I listened to the 4 audios. I tried to do it at least 3 times a day, and that lasted about 12 minutes.
Okay.
Now they've made it so that you're only hearing the music. You don't hear the frequency. You're just hearing different kind of like meditation music with the frequencies in the background. And so now they put all 4 in one so that you have an option to just do it all at the same time. So whereas before I had to listen for the whole 12 minutes every time I wanted to do it, now it's like you can do it for 3 minutes, 5 minutes. You can get all of those in one. So
Cool.
it's gotten a lot easier to do.
Yeah.
And after I did that for about 4 weeks, that's when I started to notice like it was actually rewiring my brain. So it was making new neural pathways in the brain. With trauma, parts of your brain get switched off. And so that's what will keep you like in a freeze state. Your nervous system isn't functioning correctly. And so it actually, it almost, turned those parts of my brain like back on, the parts that were off, and then the parts that were misbalanced, it brought those things back to balance. So this was, almost just a miracle because I had tried so many things, and, everybody's going to have like a little different results, but within 3 or 4 weeks, I felt like I had a regulated nervous system for the first time since I was like a little kid.
Wow.
It was amazing.
What did that do for you, like for your experience?
So what that did for me was like, the way that I noticed is I was coming upon a like kind of a trauma anniversary, which normally during like that month, I'm just out, and all my providers knew it. It was basically just survive through the time, through those
dealing with
days.
Triggers and what comes up during that time.
Yes.
Okay.
And suddenly it was like, I was like, I'm fine. I wasn't breaking down. I wasn't staying in bed. So that's what I noticed is just like, I had the ability to deal with that trigger. Not that it didn't like bring up some emotion, but because I had lived, my whole life basically in fight or flight or whatever trauma response, having had the regulated nervous system, like when that trigger came, I could deal with it.
Grounded, balanced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even if it took me off kilter for a little bit, like I got right back so much faster to where I needed to be.
Wow.
Because I wasn't in that constant state. I was finally in a regulated state. So regulated doesn't mean that you're like perfect all the time. It doesn't mean that you're never going to be angry or
Just
frustrated.
means your nervous system is kind of back in check, or it's balanced again. Okay.
Or it's just staying more balanced where you're not going like way up here or way down. You're not like suppressing all these emotions so that then they're causing issues in the body. So that's what I started to notice. And then I actually, I hadn't told my mental health providers what I was doing because I didn't even know if it was going to work. And
you're exploring something new.
And I wasn't sure how they were going to feel about it. And they saw this and they started asking questions like, what have you been doing? And so finally I said, well, I started trying this thing, and they were like, well, we want to try it because they could see the difference in me. And
was this fairly new at the time, this technology as well?
So the technology isn't new. It's actually been around since like the 70s, 80s.
Oh, cool. Okay, cool.
But it hasn't been widely available. So back then, it was like a huge $38,000 machine. Only very few practitioners like had it in their offices. And back then, you did have to be kind of like hooked up to the machine. You had to be in person, and so it was used. It just wasn't widely available. Not a lot of people had $38,000 to hand over to get the machine.
Mm-hmm.
So now it has been in this like app form since about 2020.
Okay, cool.
So probably early 2020.
How did your providers respond to that? Because they were curious right off the bat.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They were like, they asked if they could try it,
Mm-hmm.
and so we did, and which I thought was super cool because not everybody's open, and
Right.
they're like, no, I'm just gonna stick to my stuff, and
Right.
I thought it was really cool that at least some of them are willing to and wanted to know, what this was, and so now it's just starting to. It's called bioresonance. It's getting out there more, but a lot of people still don't know about it.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't know. It's easily accessible. I scan myself every single day. I do my inner voice every day. So at least every morning, just to start my morning balanced. Because a number of things can happen during the day.
Mm-hmm.
Even people can, if they turn on the news and they hear something horrible, like that can affect your emotions. So it just to keep things in check, I will listen every day. And the full scan also does what's called an optimization. So it's moving a lot of energy, but it's going to prioritize and try to bring whatever it can back to balance. So let's say for some reason that day, my thyroid is having issues. It's going to send it that 180 frequency. It's going to see what it can bring back to balance.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, our body is full of like a lot of things. It's not going to be able to bring everything back to balance at once. So then in the report, we'll be able to see like what is still out of balance. So what is showing up as red? What's a chronic issue? What's a more acute issue? And then in turn, we can take that information and then make little changes in our environment. So whether the root cause is telling us, you need to be more hydrated, whether it's some I've had people where they didn't know they had like mold in their environment, and I saw it in their report. And in fact, there's this one type of mold that's like grows on the back of your toilet where the plumber. Like not the other part where like most people don't open that lid. And there's this type of mold that if that doesn't get cleaned out, it'll start growing there. And I can see.
And you're breathing it in.
And every time you flush the toilet, your respiratory system is
Right.
breathing that in. So a lot of people don't know that they're being exposed to those types of things.
Mm-hmm.
So I can actually go in, see, what is showing up in the report, seeing what's in the environment, go check it out, and kind of get to some of those root issues and then make those changes.
Mm-hmm.
And along with the sound healing, if you're doing both of those things, then you're doing this multifaceted approach, where you're targeting both the emotional and the physical, as well as the ability. It's basically a frequency generator. So I have a frequency for, I'd say, nearly any issue.
Mm-hmm.
You want a frequency for anxiety? We got it. You want a frequency for, like your colon? We got it. There's all kinds of.
Okay, so like migraines or anything that you're actually physically dealing with.
Yes.
So I did see in your video on your website about The Body Keeps the Score.
Yes.
That book, is that what it's called?
Uh-huh.
I haven't read it, but I'm familiar with it a little bit. And so it's like essentially a lot of the physical ailments stem from emotional
Exactly.
as well. And so what you can work with here, it's like it's working with the emotional side of thing because it's tied to, like everything's tied together, right?
Yes.
And so that's why it's able to detect physical ailments as well as if it hasn't manifested as a physical one yet, it can still kind of work with that and move the energy around. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay.
That book is actually how I kind of started to figure out that I had been misdiagnosed.
I have it on my bookshelf, but I've never read it.
Yeah.
I need to read it.
It's, a lot of people love it. For some people, if they have complex trauma, it can be a lot.
Really?
That
Okay.
book can be, it just depends on the person.
Cool.
I loved it because I didn't understand all of those things. And finally, it gave me pieces that I was missing.
Mm-hmm.
So I read that and Feelings Buried Alive, and it started to make sense because I actually, so much of that trauma built up as emotion, and then either I didn't know how to express it, or it just, it was just piling up. And so I actually started during the night when your mind finally shuts down and you're not like trying to keep busy all the time. It started manifesting as seizures. So
Really?
I'd wake up in the middle of the night, and I went to a couple of neurologists, and I found one, and because I had to tell my providers, I'm like, I don't think I actually have bipolar 2. I really don't. I think that this is complex trauma, which is not a diagnosis in the United States right now. It should be. It's not. It is in the ICD, so it's an international diagnosis. But for some reason, it's not here.
Complex trauma.
So basically, PTSD, is like someone gets in a car accident, and then those, they can't get past that, and those triggers keep coming. But the concept of complex trauma is that you've been in a situation for a while where you're stuck and can't get out and don't have the support. And, oftentimes traumas just like pile up, because this thing happens, and then you're just not in a situation where you're supported. And so complex trauma is not like PTSD, but in the United States, we can only diagnose as PTSD, and then that's how it's being treated. So that's a problem, because, an adult with PTSD from, say, a car accident can go do what's called, EMDR.
I've heard of that, yeah.
Where they do the eye movements.
Stuff.
Yeah,
we had a therapist come on talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's an awesome modality, but for some people with complex trauma, it's way too much. So I actually tried that before this, and I could not tolerate it. So for some reason, because they have you focus on like an event, so your brain is actually like thinking about that event. And my issue with that, depending on how the therapist does it, is even though they say like, okay, put your stuff in this container and then let's deal with it next week, that's not how your body works. So you go home and you don't always have that therapist on speed dial, and you're basically, you're dealing with it yourself, or you're like nightmares are coming up. And that's what was happening with me. Like I would have it express as like nightmares and seizures. So
because it was all coming up, and you were going through different therapies and different things like that, and it was all coming up to the surface. Without the tools maybe to understand what was going on.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I saw this neurologist who, the very first question she asked me, this was when I started to figure it out. I finally got my diagnosis changed. It's not even still technically correct, but it's at least not bipolar anymore. And it's more like unspecified mood disorder or something. I don't know. Who knows? For insurance purposes. But like she said, have you read The Body Keeps the Score? And I smiled so big, because I had not had a doctor provider that like understood where I was coming from before I did at that point. And so she confirmed to me, yes, your seizures are, they're trauma-based. It's your nervous system. It's not, I tried to have one before that say I had epilepsy. And in fact, since I have been doing this sound healing and the bioresonance, those seizures are gone.
Amazing. I
don't have nightmares at night. I don't have those seizures anymore, because it was all my dysregulated nervous system and all that stuff that was trapped.
Right.
And it kind of blows my mind that it can do that to your body. I mean, I literally woke up convulsing, all because I didn't know how to get that stuff out. So when you listen to this sound healing, it's actually gently releasing those things. You don't have to think about the trauma. It's working on your brain. It's making those neural pathways, and it's gentle.
Because it's customized, right?
Well,
or is that why?
Well, because it's customized, because you're getting exactly what you need. You're getting the exact balance that you need. And then, you don't actually have to like go think about that traumatic event in order for it to work. Well,
I love that you're bringing all of this up, because I feel like a lot of people, because whether our nervous systems are so dysregulated or whatever, or just the happenings in the world, a lot of people are looking for healing in different ways right now. And this is something a lot of people don't talk about, is the fact that like you can jump into a modality that might be too much for you. And I've seen it happen as well, where it's like an overload or too much comes up and you don't have the resources or the tools to actually manage what's happening to heal, right?
Yes.
And this is nice to have like a modality that's like, you said gentle, where it's like it's working with you and you're still healing, but it doesn't have to be this excessive, forceful way of doing it, I guess, right?
Yeah, and everybody responds a little differently. I have had people that they'll listen to a certain, one of the tones and like they'll have some tears. For me, it wasn't that way.
Mm-hmm.
It was music and it just started working. I haven't had anyone that's had like a serious breakdown. I love other alternative modalities, but what I love about this is it gives you so much freedom. You don't have to have like someone sitting there monitoring you because you took a substance. You don't have to have the therapist like sitting there with you because you just opened this Pandora's box.
Major breakthroughs.
That is what I love, is because everything else I had done previous, like exposure therapy, your brain doesn't know the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Whether, if you're talking about the event and you're still dysregulated, your brain doesn't know whether that happened back then or now. And so you're bringing that back up in your body and your body's responding in the same way.
Right.
So that's kind of, the mental health system is starting to move that way, where they're using some more somatic therapies. But I know from still being in it that if somebody doesn't opt to go to those classes on trauma for CEUs, they're still going to keep practicing that same way. Mm-hmm. So it hasn't been revamped. Some therapists definitely know they're trauma trained therapists, but there's a lot that don't understand. And so what they'll do is that just exposure therapy, and then unfortunately, like, therapists move or they retire, and then you get a new one and they do the same thing, and then it's like then you start all over and you just start talking about the trauma again, but it's really not getting that stuff out of the body. It's not it's not teaching your body how to rest and digest. So that is part of the issue I have there that needs to change in the field. Mm-hmm. And you kind of have the same thing on the medical side as well, where like, why aren't the doctors saying like, let's start with your diet?
Right.
Let's start with these environmental pieces. Like, so we do have those kind of broken pieces.
A lot of the times it's like the issue might be, like you said, diet or sleep. And it's like the answer might not need to be a pill.
Yeah.
But for a long time, it's been, I guess, progressing in that way. And I think we've become accustomed to that. And now we're looking for different ways to actually, it's like, this is not working,
Uh-huh.
And not necessarily, not that it's not working for some people, or there's a time and place for whatever that looks like, but on a whole level, like you mentioned at the beginning of this, like a full embodied healing with mind, body, spirit, that's what we're looking at now. I feel like a lot of, it feels like the conversation we're having in the healing community, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
And what I would say to that is, if what we were doing was working, we'd have a lot more well people, if what we had been doing.
Yeah.
And it almost seems to me that the trend is sort of going in the other way.
Dis-ease, you mentioned, right?
Yes.
In your video I watched, it's like a lot of people in dis-ease.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's, it's because they don't know the tools. They haven't had the same experience where they're doing what they've been told to do. Mm-hmm. And even there's a physician named Gabor Mate.
Yeah, I've seen his clips around, his videos.
Yeah, and he's got some good videos. And
I just picked up his book. I didn't read it, but I saw his book.
The Myth of Normal?
Yeah. I just saw that.
Yes, I have that book.
I was interested. I didn't get it, but I just picked that up.
It's amazing.
Cool, I'll check it out.
It's an amazing book. And he even admitted in that book that when they were training, they, one physician or one teacher started saying, oh, all mental health is a chemical imbalance. And there was no scientific evidence to actually back that up.
Mm-hmm.
But because they started saying it, everybody regurgitated it. So for some people, it very well could be. There could be some kind of chemical imbalance, but what we're starting to see is that's not the case for everybody.
The answer is not the same across the board, so we can't
Yeah.
diagnose it the same, and the resolution to that is not going to be the same.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's what people keep repeating is the same thing that's been said that was never actually scientifically backed.
Yeah, that's
So
wild.
it's not that, like, you know, antidepressants don't help some people. They do.
Mm-hmm.
But certain things can just be a Band-Aid where, you know, I was on antidepressants and even mood stabilizers I never should have been on for years. And while sometimes they helped, it still never got my nervous system regulated. So it was the same thing. It was like, keep going back, keep taking this. And it just, you know, it made change in terms of like having a supportive person, learning some new skills, relational skills. But then when you've been in therapy for over 18 years and you're still there
Mm-hmm.
and you still aren't living the way you want to, then that's a problem.
Right.
So that's where I found the freedom. And in fact, I used to be really shy. I would have never done anything like this.
Now you're on a podcast.
I would have never started my own business. I would
Yeah.
have never, you know, just getting all that regulated. I've even used like, in fact, I even imprinted this with, we make our own patches. So frequency
Oh, cool.
patches.
How does that work?
So just on the app,
It's just right there.
this is
Okay.
just on my wrist here. So on the app, we have the frequencies we were talking about, but we also have like homeopathics.
Mm-hmm.
So we're using the frequency of those homeopathics and we can imprint those into like this patch
Interesting.
or into pellets. So I'm making my own homeopathics, my own patches,
Mm-hmm.
rather than going out and buying them at the store.
Interesting. Okay.
And they work just as well. They, in fact, the way these work is your body will take the energy it needs, and they're, like we were saying, they're very gentle. So there's no concern. The detox frequencies you do need to like just be a little careful with, that you don't overdo the detox. But other than those, you know, you can.
What do you mean by that?
So we have, you know, we have some really cool frequencies for if people don't know, like, what do I do for Lyme? What do I do if I lived in a house with mold and I'm still affected? We have actual like Lyme detox frequencies, mold detox frequencies, radiation detox. So we have some really cool ones where it actually does help the body detox
Mm-hmm.
those things that it needs to get rid of, or virus detox.
Okay.
If you've had EVB, like mono, that can do a lot of damage in the body and be dormant and then come back up. You know, there's a frequency for that. So we can use those things, and that's why everyone's kind of tailored. You know, if you see those things, you can use those frequencies. So we've had people that they were very sick with Lyme or mold or something. You know, it works for all kinds of things. I mean, I had a blood clotting disorder, so it's helped my circulation. It's helped because all those things are just layer by layer. Autoimmune is like, you know, it's not just one thing going wrong. It's a bunch of different little things. And so it'll help to get the immune system back to where it needs to be, help balance all those things, because it's very multifaceted.
Right. Yeah.
And not that I never like go see my rheumatologist. I do check up just to be safe.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, the frequency is, I looked at my doctor's visits in like 2020, and that's when I started to get really sick, and I had, I want to say over 60 just doctor's visits. I had over 20 lab draws. I mean, it was like, and this last year I had 3 checkups, like with my OB, with my primary, it is drastically reduced.
Mm-hmm.
The amount of doctor's visits. I've gotten off of inhalers, $300 a month inhalers.
So it's safe to say that this modality has had the greatest impact out
Yes.
for your own healing and
For
your own
sure.
experience. Yeah. Is that kind of what, I'm sure that's what inspired your business as well and going in that direction?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I loved what I was doing, but I was like, this is so effective.
Right.
There's just so many things you can do, and you don't have to wait. It's not like, my daughter was, this was about, I think 3 or 4 months ago, she started having some issues breathing one night, and my husband was just, he was freaking out because she was in the hospital as a baby with RSV, because my family line has these like lung asthma problems, and she just was not breathing well, and we tried a nebulizer, and he was like, I'm taking her to the hospital. And I said, give me 10 minutes, like just calm down. I ran some scans on her. I started sending her frequencies for breathing. In fact, I sent her for sleep so that I would just like get her to sleep. And within 10 minutes, she was calm. Her body was fine. She slept through the night. She got up in the morning and was like, Mom, I think I understand what you do.
That's cool.
I mean, she already,
Right.
we use hers. She does inner voice every day. She has some focus issues, possible ADHD, and she'll actually wear one of these little patches to school with like focus. And beforehand, the teachers were like, she just can't pay attention. And when we started doing this, we haven't had to use any kind of medication, or we use frequencies for her to focus.
It keeps reminding me of, I'm sure you've heard of that Nikola Tesla quote
Yes.
about frequency, like the secrets. If you want to know the secrets of the universe, what does it say? Something about, I'm going to butcher it, but understanding frequency and vibration.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So every time you keep mentioning this, that's where my mind's going. And it's cool because like what we're doing here a lot of the times with Community Cures is we're looking at exploring conversations that people might not be having, to explore modalities like that have worked for people. Like I love hearing your personal story about it, because other people might resonate with that, and they might be in a position that your story and your experience, and they've never heard of this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it's really fun to hear about. And so with all of this stuff, is that what you offer with your business as well? Like, is it guiding people through this? Is it the actual technology? Could you walk me through some of what you do for other people, as far as like how you help the community with that?
Yes. There's basically 2 different ways. And I do take clients where they can come and they can get a full scan. It will give them the sound healing to take home. We'll go through the scan together. I'll show them kind of how to read it and the imbalances I'm seeing, make suggestions, and often I'll even make them like a remedy with pellets, a homeopathic remedy that has the frequencies they need and some of the detox frequencies. But my favorite way is actually, if they get the app, I mentor people on how to use the app, because daily use is actually going to be the most preventative. It's going to give them the most benefit. Rather than paying me to do one scan, they can do multiple scans a day. They can use it for their kids. We even can do pets. Mm-hmm. So we can even use our harmonics with pets. And, there was a dog of my friend that had pancreatitis, and I used frequencies for pancreatitis because this dog had been at the med vet all night, and they basically said, like, you might lose your dog today. And so I was like, hey, let me try this. Let's just do it. And, it wasn't immediate, but slowly but surely the dog started to recover, and they're just amazing because all these things are imbalances in our body. Mm-hmm. And so yes, you'll get the best benefit. And like I was saying, accessibility, we could have gone to the hospital and had my daughter admitted, but instead, it was 2:00 in the morning, and I got up and I started using it. So it's just right there in the palm of your hands. It's like having your own wellness center.
What's the app called?
In the palm of your hands. It's called the AO Scan.
The AO Scan. Okay.
App.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and there is a bit of a learning curve, but that's what I help mentor people on how to use it. Mm-hmm. So we have certain, they have training, but we have certain modules, and I'm accessible to answer questions. because they are continually adding things. We always get new programs. In fact, we got a whole tuning fork program. So instead of going
all through the app too.
Instead
Okay,
of
cool.
buying the
Your own tuning forks.
Yeah, I can't remember how many he said. It was like 287, or you'd have to go buy every tuning fork if you wanted every tuning
Because
fork.
I've seen them where it's like, this is for the heart and this is for the like, and so you have probably hundreds of them just in one app.
We do, and in fact, when you're in your own profile, there's a little scan button, so you don't even have to know which one to use. It'll tell you which one your body's needing.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Whereas
cool.
otherwise, you'd either have to figure out which one you need.
Just to backtrack to like the inner voice thing, does it scan it through the vibration of your voice just so I can understand it?
Yes.
So, okay. And then that's how it's able to pick up where you're at with everything.
Yeah. So it's kind of like everything in your body is like a radio station. So your heart should be at a particular frequency. They've been able to figure out what everything in your body should be at. So like which radio station. And if it's not like right at that particular radio station, if it's off balance, then it'll show you it's off balance. So your eyes are at a different frequency than your heart and like everything in your body. So that's what it does, is it's measuring.
Okay.
It's measuring all those frequencies in your body that they've logged and that they've developed, and then you can see.
And it could be off balance for an infinite amount of reasons, probably.
Yeah, like for example, your heart chakra has a lot to do with like grief. So it could be off because of your aorta, or it could be off because you're feeling grief. It could be emotional, it could be physical. There could be either one of those.
And back to the body keeps the score. That for a long time may manifest as some sort of heart issue physically.
It definitely could.
Right? Or it's just
or lungs.
or
Like
lungs.
I think that's where a lot of my lung issues came from.
The respiratory stuff.
My respiratory stuff, yeah.
Okay.
I think a lot of that was like trapped grief and just, not knowing what to do with it. And yeah, it definitely, you can have imbalances like that in your body.
Well, it does feel like a lot of like ancient wisdom's kind of coming back, and it feels like a lot of that is wrapped up in this. I mean, sound and vibration has been a focus for, a lot of ancient wisdom, a lot of ancient practices used sound for specific reasons, is what I can kind of gather. And so it feels like we are kind of starting to look back and seeing like what's going on here,
Yes.
and like how do we like kind of bring that into the modern times through like the technology we have today and other things like that. So I think that's really cool.
Well, and it's true that they're already using these things in other countries. I mean, like I actually do have a couple doctors that are with me, but in other countries they full on use some of these therapies already.
Do you think we're resistant here
Yes.
to this?
Yes.
Just like our mindset on
Yes.
being open to new
That's
modalities or new
it's
ways
how
of
our
doing
system
things?
was set up.
Yeah.
It was just set up that way.
Because it's easier to just have a knee-jerk reaction to something new and be like, I don't even want to learn about this, versus like someone trying it, they're like, no, this actually helped me. Like,
Well, it kind of goes even deeper than that. It was the Rockefellers that funded our medical system, and their family even used homeopathy all the time, but wouldn't let it be in our medical system. And in fact, doctors went to jail if they used it.
so there's this corruption involved with
Yes.
that. And
So that's so it kind of got erased, and then it was like people were scared, and now it's been so erased that like a lot of people don't even know it already existed.
right.
And now we're able to use it in different forms of not just going and getting like the plant and making the homeopathy. We're using like the energy and putting it into pellets, and I mean it's amazing the technology that we can use.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
So is there any other modalities that you kind of implement with your with the work that you do as well?
The other one that is a really cool, it's a newer one, is it's called MindSync. And so what it is, my daughter's actually, we've been using it
Did you
since
say MindSync?
It's called MindSync,
MindSync,
yes.
okay.
It's in our app, and it's similar to like Brain Tap, if you've ever heard of that, but so you make your own affirmation meditations, like in your own voice. So basically, a lot of people will say affirmations out loud,
Right.
which is helpful, but your brain tries to fight that, and you're like, I don't know if but when you make it with, you can choose the song, it's also a binaural effect. And so you're listening to this song with headphones and you're hearing your own voice, and you can make it for any issue.
Mm-hmm.
You can make a weight loss one, you can make a confidence one, you can make, I am statements. And with my daughter, I didn't make it for a particular issue, but it, it was saying things like, you're smart, funny, lovable. And, back in October when we started, her math scores were all like in the red. And the only other thing that we did different is our teacher spent about 5 minutes a day just kind of doing some one-on-one time. And then she did this mind sync every day. And I just got her scores back last week. I pulled it out of her bag and I was in shock because she went from red to like being above average in 2 and then green at average in 1.
Wow, that's cool.
So not just like a little step.
Yeah.
It was like a giant leap.
Well, I can see that being very helpful.
Yeah. And, I could have even made it specific to math, but it was more just.
I am.
Yeah. Like her, telling her brain she can do it. Like just affirmations. Because the way we talk to ourselves is so powerful. If you're telling yourself negative things and you can't do this, that's kind of what you're probably going to produce.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is I can see it being so helpful because a lot of people probably run around every day not even realizing how negatively they're talking about to themselves, like in their mind all day long, every day. And that kind of builds up. And so like having a tool that's like really mirrored back to you that you can hear yourself. And you said there's music behind it, like a meditation
music
track.
And the binaural.
Binaural. Okay.
So
yeah, yes, that sounds wonderful.
So what it does, it's kind of different than any other program out there because it makes it so that your brain can't fight it. Mm-hmm. And, we've had amazing
because
results.
You're actually listening to it, and it's way easier to not even realize and drown out the way that you're actually negatively like kind of cycling through your own.
Yep.
And like, I mean, so many people are like, I'm this, oh, I'm so this. And it's just all negative all day long. And it's like, well, why do you feel so crappy right now?
Well, and most of our issues are subconscious programming. Mm-hmm. And whether you realize that or not, you may not know, that thing that happened when you were 4 is still hanging out in your subconscious and still causing you to believe a certain way about yourself. Mm-hmm.
Or someone said this when you were young and you believed that
exactly
your whole life.
Yeah.
And,
even somebody says, an adult says something to a child, that's powerful. And
I had someone tell me where they're like, they were told, they were singing as a kid, having fun, and it's like, you're not good at singing, don't sing.
Oh yeah.
And then they don't sing their whole life, but then that was what they like really wanted to do, and they broke out of that, and like they have a wonderful voice and they're enjoying it and it brings them happiness, but it took them up until their adult years to realize that, wait, I don't have to listen to that. Like, why did that? And it took a while to even remember that memory, and there's really intense versions of that as well that kind of stick with us. So it's nice to see this modality that can kind of bring a lot of that up, so that
for
we can
sure
work through that.
Yeah, and so these more recent things we didn't have these when I first started, but yeah, it's pretty amazing because even when I first started it, before I went to that conference, I did kind of hire a couple different practitioners, but like it gets pricey. Mm-hmm. Yeah. For every separate issue to hire a different practitioner, that can get really pricey. So this is just a good way to have a whole bunch of tools in one where you can do it yourself and learn how to do it.
I do have a question. So what was the therapy you mentioned with the eye? Where
the EMDR.
Like, okay, so is this similar in the sense that while you're listening to the tones or the frequencies, you're kind of you're getting into a state of meditation or focus like that is bringing it up, except this is like with a guide and they're actually evoking like the trigger or the memory. And so with this, you're not really doing that, but it can still tackle that with the frequency or with the.
Well, the reason
I don't know if that's making sense.
So with the EMDR, the reason they do the eye desensitization, or you can also like have these paddles that they vibrate on one side or the other.
Yeah.
It is similar in the fact that it's like you're accessing both parts of the brain.
And with what you're listening to, it's doing that.
With binaural beats, you're doing a very similar. You're making new neural pathways, it's, so I'm not against EMDR. It's very effective for some people. It takes a lot longer, and it can be really painful for especially someone that has like complex trauma.
But it's still, they both unlock.
But yes,
in a similar manner.
You're doing similar mechanisms.
Okay.
And I don't know the exact, maybe ours targets, because ours uses radionics. So maybe ours is a step ahead of that, just because we're also using frequency. So we're accessing the both parts of the brain, but then you're also you're hitting that energetic imbalance as well.
Okay.
So maybe that's the difference.
I see.
I've wanted to kind of look that up and figure it out, but it is very advanced, complicated technology. So
yeah.
that can even at times be hard to explain, but it's very effective.
Yeah, I'm interested to look all this up. Do you have any success stories that you could maybe share with us as well, like that you've personally witnessed from other people that have tried this that you've maybe worked with?
Yes, I have someone who.
I mean, besides your own as well, right?
My own and my daughter's, and
Yeah.
I had someone. For a while, I was doing lots of my own conferences. So I went back and I started doing some of these energy conferences, and one of my neighbors said, my wife has tried all these things. She's not getting better. And, she's tried a lot of good things, but it's just not working. And so he said, do you think this could help her? And I said, yeah, I do. So she took the effective approach, which I started teaching her how to use the app, and she had a very similar experience to mine. She had also had the complex trauma that turned into a bunch of physical autoimmune issues. And for whatever reason, maybe it just wasn't hitting all areas, the other stuff she was doing. But when she started scanning every day, when she started doing the inner voice, she got up and started running marathons again.
Really?
I mean, she was in bed, like I was. And it honestly, I don't remember the exact time span, but it wasn't that long. She's like, this is what worked.
Yeah, remove some sort of block that's in the body.
Yeah, it could have been a subconscious block. It could have been in our chakras and meridians, we'll have those blockages if the energy is not moving properly. And people, try to think that those are all weird and woo-woo, but really they're not. They're just energy. They're not. We all have them, and it's just blockages. Whether you're, you could have your throat chakra could be overactive or it could be underactive, just like anything else in your body. Your liver could be sluggish, or it could have inflammation. Right,
and everything's in the body. It's a whole thing, right? So it's it's not far-fetched that emotions are tied to, or can manifest into some physical thing. It's all in this body of ours,
Yes.
It's a whole, that's what, it's the holistic approach to it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we would never say just replace your doctor. I mean, you want to use this. It's not a medical device. It's educational information. It is doing a lot for the body, but if you were having serious heart palpitations, by all means, go to your doctor too. It's not a one or other approach. Right. I'm totally for, having a balance of using both.
Yeah, of course.
We don't have to kick them out, and it doesn't have to be one or the other. I hate black and white thinking.
Yeah, me too.
We need to be in the gray, and
because to deny the benefits of Western medicine, and the life-saving things that have happened there.
Exactly.
And then also to deny maybe some of the detrimental side of how far that's gotten.
Correct.
It's there's both sides of the story, and so it's we can implement a lot of healing aspects or modalities into our regimen or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Well, would you mind pointing people to where they could maybe learn more about this? Because this is really interesting. This is the first time I've heard of all of this stuff, so I'm interested to look into it. But also, if they want to contact you and maybe see what you have going on, if they're interested in that, or also just the topics we've covered today, is there any resources you want to leave us with?
Yes. So I will offer, if someone wants to try these amazing frequencies, you can go to my site, KristaBigler.com, and You guys will link that, right?
Yes,
See.
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
not everyone knows how to spell my name. So you can go there and it'll say, book a free session. You know, depending on what's going on with the person, we can either do like an inner voice, or we can like send some frequencies. We can do, you know, whatever the issue is they're dealing with, and they can try it out. And then I can chat with them, see what their needs are. And so that's one way. They can also go to solexglobal.com, which is their blog, which will give a little more of like how this works, all the different programs it has. And then ultimately, you know, after doing some research, can reach out back to me, because you really do want a mentor to learn how to do it. Of course, you can sign up on your own, but then you're kind of by yourself. You want to have somebody that you can ask questions and walk through, and somebody that like knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
my brain is really good at pattern recognition. I'm very good at reading these scans, even though my thing was mental health, but for some reason that is just one of my gifts or something. So I love helping people interpret and figure out how to implement it the best in their homes. Whether it's they have an emergency with their kid or their dog, or they just want something preventative so that, you know, they don't end up spending more money in the end. So, you know, when I get those, you know, like money, I can't think of the right word, but the objections, you know, it's like, I just remember I was spending $300 a month for an inhaler, and that was just one thing.
Right. Yeah. It gets pricey.
And those things, I think people have a hard time realizing, like, I'm spending, you know, without seeing everything you're spending, this really is the most effective way to reduce those expenses.
So I do have one last question too. What kind of sparked the desire to turn around and like run with this and like want to offer this for other people? Because, you know, it's like helped you and benefited you, but a lot of people have those experiences and don't really want to, or not that they don't want to, but it's not like they don't have the inkling to like make that their mission. What was the drive behind that for you?
So I've always been a helper. I mean, I started out working with people with disabilities, then I went into social work, you know, and I always wanted to do something to help people. And while I loved hospice, you know, we were making people comfortable as they died. And I was helping with mental health. I was helping people with grief, but it was only temporary. And, you know, this seemed to me like a much bigger mission, especially because not everybody knows about it. Not everybody's brave enough to pioneer things that aren't well known yet. And I guess I felt within me like, this is just part of your mission. This is something you're supposed to do. And I knew I was going to need to make a change. And I guess having my own experiences makes me a better mentor, a better, you know, I already had a lot of compassion, but even more compassion for people. Like I understand where they're coming from. I don't see mental health as a stigma. I don't see, you know, it's just, we've got to stop that stuff.
Yeah. It's not hard for you to have these conversations.
And maybe, you know, we have different people in our community that come from different backgrounds. And I guess maybe I'm sort of the mental health piece where, you know, others have been like holistic practitioners. They've done different things, but instead of helping people be just comfortable to die, like this actually helps people feel better.
Yeah.
Live.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's what sparked me, was when I started, and you know, it peels back layers. So it wasn't like everything wasn't immediate. Some of those physical things did take a little bit longer, but as you do it consistently, as you do it as a pattern, that's when I was like, I know this can help people. It's, you know, what I was doing before was helping, but it was temporary.
Yeah.
And this is more of an approach that is going to be long lasting. It's going to have a faster effect, and it's just so gentle. Whereas a lot of the other things I tried were brutal. It was like hard experiences to kind of get to this place. And that's why I'm like, I know I can show people an easier way. And for some, it's going to sound too easy to like just listening to music. You know, for some, it sounds too easy, but it really, you know, it's all the brain. It works with the brain. It's a somatic therapy to like get things back on track, because that's what we're missing in Western culture, is that energetic piece and that kind of spiritual energetic piece. And like you said, it doesn't have to be either or. It doesn't have to be just Western, just Eastern. Like, we just need a balance and a mix of bringing things back to homeostasis.
I love it. And I have seen a rise of people interested in that approach. And so it is cool to see new modalities like this that kind of pop up, and it's very intriguing to me. So I appreciate you sharing and educating what you do with us today. It was really awesome to hear.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it. Thank you again
Thank you
for
for
coming
inviting
on.
me.